welcome to the discovery of the neutron. I'm Ayana Jones, and this is my artifact. So basically, the atomic model begun with J.J. Thomson's concept of the plum pudding model, which basically stated that atoms were inherently these positive masses, and what gave them their charge was the presence of neutrons just kind of floating within it, which kind of looks like plum pudding and the pieces of plum in American schooling. Some teachers will help their students by referring to it as a chocolate chip cookie, but at the time of J.J. Thomson, it was plum pudding. Now, this was updated through the gold foil experiment. Now, the gold foil experiment was basically alpha waves being shot towards a piece of gold foil. Now, this represents the atoms within the gold foil. But what was noticed through the gold foil experiment, and the gold foil experiment was done by Ernest Rutherford, was the different places that the alpha waves ended up. So I've drawn only three just to talk about the three positionings. One was directly in line with the start point. Another was kind of in the same direction that it was shot out at, but at a different angle. And finally, a completely opposite direction than the alpha wave was shot at. And what was concluded was that basically there were nuclei within an atom that were positively charged. Now, because alpha waves are positively charged, when the alpha waves were shot and they hit the positive nucleus, they would bounce back. When they would hit it kind of at an angle, it would just disrupt its path. And when they wouldn't pass by it at all, it would just go straight through. Now, that was how, after the gold foil experiment was done, that was how the planetary model was come up with having a nucleus of a positive charge and the electrons of the negative charge floating around. But this is our complete modern example of the planetary model. Originally, the planetary model did not have the little blue guys, and the little blue guys represent a neutron. So basically, it was just the positive protons surrounded by the electrons. Moving forward, there were a couple of things that weren't adding up. For example, the atomic number directly correlates to the number of protons an atom has. Now, electrons are known to not have any measurable weight. So, if the atomic number is the number of protons something has, and electrons don't have weight, then the atomic number should directly correlate to the mass, because protons have a mass of 1 AMU. However, that was not the case. When looking at helium, it was a 2 number difference. In the lithium, it was a 1 integer difference, and in beryllium, it was a whopping 5 integer difference. So that doesn't add up. Another thing was isotopes. Isotopes are the same but different. Basically, they're elements with the same atomic number, but they're not quite the same thing. Now, later what was derived was it's just simply the number of neutrons. But they didn't know this, so they're saying, how can something have the same atomic mass and the same chemical makeup, but be different? This was easily illustrated by helium versus hydrogen. Helium is supposed to have 2 protons, while hydrogen only has 1. So theoretically, putting 2 hydrogen models on one side of a scale and one helium model, should be equal, but that wasn't the case. The helium model was heavier than the hydrogen model. So knowing these knowns, knowing that the atomic number didn't always correlate to the mass, and that there was this weird disconnect between the mass of one helium and the mass of 2 hydrogen, this is when people started to think maybe there's more. So James Chadwick, basically, he took lithium and boron and put alpha waves at them. And what he noticed was what he called gamma rays coming out. And then he took this, and what was interesting about these rays is that they had no charge. So it couldn't have been protons coming out, and it couldn't have been electrons coming out. So he took it one step further, and he added some paraben wax. So the alpha waves would go through the element sample. There would be these waves kicked out. And then when it went through the wax, there was pings of protons with high velocity just coming out. Protons, protons, protons. Now what's interesting is that when you look at these things that our science teachers used to have on their desks in like 6th grade, right? One of these would be raised up and hit the other. And the other one would fly up. So it would go from this to this, and back and forth, and back and forth. This only was able to happen because all of these balls were the same mass. So that meant that something of a neutral charge with the same mass as a proton was coming out of here. Because the only way to make protons fly out is if they are hit with something of a similar mass. And that is where our electron was born, right in here. They realized that in these waves, they were tiny dots of electrons being shot at the wax.